Welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time visiting. My name is Tina Hurley. I'm the founder and CEO of Less Leg, More Heart. It's a community-based charity. We help people with disabilities, acquired ambulatory disabilities. If you want more information about the organization, please visit our website, www.lesslegmoreheart. And you can find all the information about how to help us if you want to be a volunteer or a partner, how to get help from us if you need assistance and you have a disability, and also just information about our story, our why, who's on our team, and how to sort of link into some supports if you're feeling isolated. So this platform was created to share information, businesses, services, goods, and stories to provide an uplifting nature to our community, education for people to understand their options, and vetted sources with folks and brands that have similar core values to our institution. So today I have an amazing guest with me. You've seen her on a prior segment. She's a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist. She is, as the joke I mentioned last segment, a shoo-in for the show. Her name is April Shoo-in, and we're here to talk today about women's health. I'm going to let her lead because she has just an expansive amount of knowledge, and I'll come in for some of the tangents I'm sure she's going to try to keep me off of. But April, thanks again for being here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And women's health, this is a huge topic. There is so many places to go with it, and so I'll certainly just let you lead because I'm sure you know better than most what things are relevant and important for people to take home in a short segment.
Oh, short.
Yeah, no, not too short. Yes, no pressure.
No pressure at all. First of all, I have to say, I've been doing this for a really long time, like I said last time, and the thing that gets me up and to work every day and passionate about is women's health related things. And I hesitate to call it women's health because it is a little bit exclusive in nature, because some people are non-binary. There are a lot of trans women. There are a lot of women who don't necessarily identify as women, or weren't identified as women at birth. And so I think it's important to kind of lump everybody in and know that it's at least my practice is a safe place to go and discuss some of these issues. But one of my major frustrations is how poorly women's health is handled in a lot of traditional healthcare settings. I see a lot of hormonal imbalances that are not identified properly and are just solved with birth control when a person is in their teens, and then kick down the curve later to like, well, just get IVF, and then afterwards like, well, just get a hysterectomy and solve your problems. And so I find it very frustrating. Yeah. Or another thing that causes me just rage, I'm just going to be honest, just rage, is that no matter what the problem is with a lot of women, weight is blamed. And that is a big source of frustration. I had a patient who went in for a surgery on their shoulder, and it was a very long, extensive surgery. And during that time period, because of the way they were positioned, they developed some hip pain. And when they complained about the hip pain to try to get some help for that, they were told it was because she was told, you're fat, and that's the problem. But I mean, she didn't get more fat in the 8-hour surgery took. So I see that all the time, where people come in and they are apologizing before I could get 2 words out about their weight. Before, like, I know if I lost weight, my knees wouldn't hurt, but my knees hurt. And like, let's just talk about your knees. Let's just solve the knee problem.
It hurts my heart.
Exactly.
It hurts my heart because there's so much shame in it. And yes, obesity is a huge risk factor. Right. It's part of the metabolic syndrome. It is one of the concomitant pieces to, the rising diabetic population and all the associated comorbidities of all of that. All of that being said and acknowledged and agreed on, there are also a lot of conditions that can also, have palliative options in addition to or outside of weight loss, which is always recommended for people. And nobody ignores the fact that they're overweight and that they need to lose weight. Right. It wears on everybody every day, all the time. Yeah. And so it's good to have that acknowledged in certain settings when it's appropriate, but in a way that's also gentle and in addition to helpful things to assist them in that.
That's the thing right there too, is most people don't take care of the thing that they're mad at, right? Like, so if you're angry at your body and you hate your body, why would you want to take care of it? So my approach is like always from okay, let's just look at healthy choices. Let's just take weight off the table. You know, do you want to eat a different way? Let's talk about that. What's in, you know, what's stopping that? Let's try to figure out your barriers to exercise. You know, most people, their weight comes from a lot of it is either, you know, stress or poor sleep or a hormonal imbalance. And so I always look at it from, let's look at these factors. How can we help with these factors and get you healthier, get your blood work better, get everything running smoother, rather than a place of shame.
I really am so excited that the segment's happening today because I am a woman. In
case you haven't noticed.
And I had a child last year. And I'm blessed to be able to say that, like, my entire life, I've been an avid athlete. The secondary outcome of that aggressive athletic background was that I always had a very capable body and never really had a lot of concern about the BMI that was going to come up at the doctor's office.
Right.
And since I got pregnant, and of course I'm disabled and very restricted, and there are a lot of prosthetic challenges surrounding excessive weight gain in a short period of time, and the pandemic and all of those other things that were keeping us inside, and the winter in New England, and blah, 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 blah.
And having a baby.
And I had a baby. Right. So all these things happened, and I've been having a very incredible hard time losing the weight. But the interesting piece of this is that exactly the same reasons that you're mentioning, it's not about the weight that's not coming off, it's about the things behind that weight that are unable to be fixed necessarily. The sleep deprivation, you can't necessarily fix that when you're dealing with a newborn. I mean, it will come. It will get better when it gets better. You know, the associated stresses of recurrent daycare illnesses, being a working mom, the inflammation that occurs with other things that are, you know, challenged, and you can't get used to that. I mean, I've got bilateral uveitis of my eyes that has cropped up as a systemic sign of inflammation because of all of these sleep-deprived states. So all of those personal sharing pieces is not a piece to solicit pity or any of that from anyone. It's just to say that behind every smile and successful person, we are all fighting tremendous odds every day, every week, every month, every year to be our best self, and especially women. And I don't mean to reduce the struggle of men, which is their own section of things, but as women, working women specifically, working childbearing women also, and then all the other types that are dealing with their own struggles, figuring out the layers that are causal and the layers that are not. And I think that the overweight piece, specifically, at least for me, and what it sounds like for most women, which makes me feel less alone.
And that's part of it.
Right, is that it's because of all the other stuff. And I'm so blessed that I have people like influences like you and other clinicians and friends and tribes in my life that have allowed me to detach from the stigma and the pressure of what this body would otherwise have been as a stressor to me. And like you said, like this aversion to yourself and this neglect of yourself and this anger towards yourself that just perpetuates the bad habits that are making it hard to lose it. And I have friends like that. I have a friend in particular that I think of off the top of my head. I will, because they're the perpetual person that can't be happy with their body. And when I see them, it's their smile and their heart and their laugh and their kindness and those things that are meaningful to me. And it breaks my heart that people like that person I'm thinking of and the clientele you're mentioning harp so bad and are being promoted to do so by some of the folks they may see in traditional medicine. And I think that there's a good place for like morbidly obese folks to discuss options for health, but your everyday person that's, you know, a little overweight or obese by the whatever criteria.
And that's if you also a lot of times a woman will have perfect bloods, like this is like I have people who perfect bloods, perfect blood pressure, exercise routine, clean diet, like you could not, like on paper, vision of health. Their BMI is higher than what it should be, and they end up spending their yearly physical just talking about their risk factors instead of you know, how wonderful they're doing, really.
And then maybe in that moment instead, you know, you can, if a clinician feels necessary to say, like, you know, this is the BMI chart, which is flawed, we know, very much so. Maybe they literally have big bones. Maybe they, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Maybe they have hardware in their spine and their leg that creates a weight differential or whatever. I mean, they weighed me without my prosthetic at a number of doctor's appointments and told me that I was underweight at some point. This is not a fake story.
That's so crazy.
There's a lot.
So crazy.
Yeah, like there's a lot of flawed stuff that we do. I think there's a role for some of these mass charts and scales for generalization, but that's the piece that needs to be impressed upon clinicians and patients is a lot of these things are developed as large generalized screening tools for the purpose of sort of a smattering idea of health versus not. And that in those moments, could clinicians just touch on, hey, this is the BMI chart, this is where you fall, here's an information sheet about BMI, the goods and the bads related to the test, and how are you feeling? Right. What are you needing? You know, what are you doing about the things that you're needing? Are there things I can provide to you that we can move forward with from a prevention standpoint? Anything in addition to that.
And also, the flip side is sometimes thinner women, I've seen things get missed. I've seen sleep apnea missed because they don't present as somebody with sleep apnea. I've seen that time and time again. And I've had multiple conversations with patients where I've said, I really think you have sleep apnea. And they're like, I can't, I'm thin. And I'm like, nope, you still can. Please go and ask for a sleep test. And yep, they have apnea. I have seen all sorts of things missed. Or taken a little less seriously because they're thin, so you couldn't possibly be having a problem. And so it goes both ways, and it is heartbreaking to me. And so that is a big part of what I do too, and why I go through all the systems checks with people, because I want to make sure we don't miss anything. But a big part of what I think is important for healthcare is really trying to teach people to be kind to themselves and to love themselves and to, I guess that's really the important part, you know, trying to retrain all that negative self-talk. And that's that's the added complexity when you're dealing with most cisgendered women, you know, women, they have a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of
inward projected shame.
Yeah.
Right? This for some reason, like this shame because of the shoulds that have been
There's
placed on them.
Yeah. I was actually writing a piece about that called, like, please let go of the shoulds. Just throw them out the window. Compost them, do something with them, because they are not serving you. And we have this idea of never being good enough, never enough. And over time, that eats away at somebody's self-esteem, but also affects their health. If you are constantly berating yourself, that takes up a lot of bandwidth. You know, think of all that you could accomplish if you didn't have that pinballing around your head, and that stressors that adds, and the cortisol levels going up, and the inflammation. It's counterproductive to a lot of the health goals that people are trying to achieve.
This is so striking me right now in my life. You know, you talked about this inner dialogue, and it sounds foo-foo to some people. Right. Until you really have either recognized the importance because you see the transitions in other people that you are around or treat, or you have done it yourself and you have noticed a change in not just the way that you treat yourself, but truly the experience that you tend to have in life in general, and your lack or improved judgments of other people. I mean, it's literally, you create the stage and the platform for the way that you experience the world and the way that you talk to yourself. And I have a lot of personal testimony to this piece because I was that person. I was a gymnast. I had Romanian coaches. My toes couldn't be pointed enough. I didn't get a 10. A 10 is what you're striving for. 9.8 is not a 10. You know, and so
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. You know, for decades you grow up in that culture of perfection, and then you have to try to let that go. And then you go to college and it's perfection. You're striving for this 4.0. There's summa cum laude. There's honors degrees and honors programs, and there's all the extra tassels you get to wear. And like you're so busy achieving in an effort to feel good about what you have to offer literally, like as an external thing,
Right.
that it wasn't until everything was literally ripped from me, like leg cut off, lost my husband, you know, house, dog, everything. I started over after my limb amputation, and it was the most traumatic time of my life, but I am so, so grateful because it literally stopped that recording. Whoever I had been, all the things I would have said to myself, because I didn't know myself anymore and had to rebuild that from scratch, I had the opportunity to literally change that dialogue. And in my circumstance, and I'm sure a lot of other folks that have hit this like rock bottom point in their life, your opportunity to start anew with that identity literally is just from the story that you tell yourself about who you are.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy part about this whole life piece, is that you literally can just change your story at any time.
Yeah.
And it just
You
starts,
get to make the rules for yourself.
and there's no, and you don't have to do anything or go
There's
anywhere.
no paperwork to file.
Or say anything even out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the baffling part to this, that I have never been able to really, I guess, vocalize in this kind of a way. But it's profound, because the person that I had been and the things that were important to me and the things that ailed me and the perspectives that I have are totally different now in a better way, despite like terribly unfortunate medical circumstances that continue. But it's in the way that you treat yourself and the value that you give yourself.
You have your own back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bet you probably then carry that with how you see other things, because when you've got this internal self-criticism, it extends out into how you see everything around you.
Yes.
And when you realize, like, oh, I'm not just being mean to me, I'm being mean to everything I see, and you can shut that voice down. Yeah, you can really change everything.
And it can get bad. I mean, I've seen people that have tailspun because they get into that place. They start to really talk bad about themselves. They wish they were someone else. They're posting photos of themselves from a photo shoot they did 10 years ago when they actually were terribly unhealthy, working out many more times a day than probably was healthy, starving themselves, but they had a couple good pictures that they look back at every 10-year intervals and post, because that's their idea of happy.
And that is validated. And that's another big thing with women's health, is that's how women a lot of times are validated, by how they look or how nice they are or, you know, what they give, instead of really who they are at their core. And that's, I feel, is really important, is to help women try to figure out who are they and what makes them happy and how do they want to see, you know, be in this world.
That is such a hard thing to answer.
Yeah.
The first podcast I ever did as an amputee, thank goodness he sent me the questions ahead of time, because the first question was, so who is Tina Hurley? I was like, I mean, do I say what I'm good at, what my degrees are, my role in my family, what I enjoy, my hobbies? Like, I am at the center of a multifaceted Venn diagram of things that overlap, but that are not, like, my name's in the middle. But where do you go with that, right? And then when some of those are popped, those bubbles on the outside, and some new ones are filled in that haven't yet been labeled, it's a constantly evolving state of who we are.
And a lot of times we morph who we are based to our circumstances instead of really just who we are.
Right, maintaining your authenticity despite external factors. For empaths, women especially, it's very hard to not appease. We're these natural, you know, caregivers, right? We are literally, we bear life. And in that caregiving role that we have is this, I think, and I'm least trained on this subject matter in respect to this whole plethora of subjects here. I mean, these are like books and books and books and libraries on this information, but the social roles that we've played our whole life, like genotypically, we're evolved as this caregiver role.
Yeah.
And so we want to appease people in our presence. We want to make things happy and tidy and comfortable for our loincloth, you know, husbands that are coming home after killing the saber-toothed tiger. We're going to make the fire, and I mean, but we've evolved from that.
When are we appeasing ourselves?
When
and where
do we
are we
turn
in
it
that?
inward?
Yeah.
Right? We've got all these energies outward, and because of that, we've literally depleted ourselves from the ability to maintain homeostasis.
And when people talk about on social media self-care, a lot of times we have it in our head like, oh, self-care is a bath or a candle or a glass of wine or a mantra. But that, for me, self-care is being true to who yourself is, like figuring out who you are and holding space for that person. Because
how do I honor myself in this moment, right?
Yes.
Like maybe I'm okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not okay.
Right.
Maybe I'm having the wine to cope. Maybe I'm not having the wine to cope. Maybe I'm taking a bath, or maybe I'm just going to lay here and open mouth breathe in the stall. Do you know the first day I brought my child to daycare, they said they'd watch him for 60 minutes because he's under 1. So the YMCA watches him for just 60 minutes till he's 1, which he is now. So now they watch him for 90. Tangent. First day I brought him, I sat in the bathroom stall and I open mouth breathed at the wall for the full hour.
Yeah.
I just needed quiet.
When my kids were very little, I would drive around without any music on because I was like, there's no noise. I can hear myself think. But that was self-care, right? It looked very different than I think what people imagined. And I just thought, for me, sometimes self-care is staring at a wall.
Spa day is great, but in these moments, and of course there are phases of your life, right? Your needs are different, but in these specific early days with children, my needs are like, I don't want someone rubbing, touching.
No, you're oversensitized.
That's what it is. Your nervous system is smoked.
Right.
And so there's these deprivation, like there's all these really cool things, but maybe later in life for an empty nester, they are lacking stimulation, right? So like this pendulum swings so wide that it's a constantly evolving source of needs and changing needs. And so with that, like you mentioned, you have to take time to get your fingers on your own pulse. Yeah. And I feel like nobody really dedicates the time that's needed to reevaluate who they are in this new chapter, this new year. And I think that's why resolutions, or at least the time of resolutions, are, I think, interesting, because it's this, for some reason, societally accepted period of time where people reflect and then they start to make, pre-contemplative efforts into new action for betterment of whatever their goals are. But why can't we do that besides December 31st?
Right. And I think where we go a little overzealous with those is like, we're like, I'm going to change everything about myself.
I've done that before. Yeah, I've had resolution lists that are longer than my grocery list, and I have a full fridge. So, so can you give just maybe 2 or 3 quick tips? So our topic was women's health.
Oh my, yes.
Just 2 or 3 quick tips as take-homes for folks that pertain to being a healthier woman.
I would say the hardest, simplest thing is to be kinder to yourself. Stop all the shit talk. That is, like, if you can even be aware of every time it comes up, every time you hear that voice in your head that says, I should, start to recognize that. Even if in the beginning you don't do anything with it, like, that is step 1. Just noticing how many times a day you're saying, I should do this. Or the second part of that is, every time a day you say something terrible about yourself, is recognize that too, and just start to pay attention. Over time, you'll be able to then put in nicer phrases, but that's really the big one right there. That's where you want to start.
Like, let's just do that one.
Let's just start there, and I'll come back and we'll talk about it.
But I think to the piece that you're mentioning is the there's the first pass, second pass theory that I was taught a few years ago, because I had those same inner dialogues, and someone said, recognize when it's happening. And just be cognizant, almost in like a meditative yogi way, where you're not trying to change it, but you're just like giving a context to the frequency. And you usually are pretty surprised at how frequent it is.
And it's a lot usually for people in the beginning.
And then later sort of start to develop a certain saying that you write over the top 3 things that you've said negatively to yourself. Maybe you say, I'm so fat. Maybe you say, I hate those stretch marks. Maybe you say, I don't like my double chin. I don't know. I'm picking 3 that have maybe I have seen maybe
these are,
And so instead, if I were to say, oh, I'm fat, I would go, I am so impressed that my body has handled all of these challenges this past year. And like an empowering statement, not even out loud, but sometimes maybe but you literally stop, acknowledge, and you re-say or think that thing to start literally
You're
rewiring
the path that is, because they're well-grooved paths. They're like paths in deep snow, and they're nice, easy ones to go down. And our job is to clear a new path through the harder, deeper snow. So it takes a while in the beginning, but that's what you're doing. You're grooving a new path.
I love that. I've broken trail one time on a mountain.
Hard, right?
It was, I got like 16 steps up and made my friend go in front again. But to this point, with the snow coming, with the walls closing in, especially in New England, and with all of this time that otherwise would be spent outdoors, challenge yourself if you're one of those women in the community that may benefit from having an improved inner dialogue. You know, look into some more information, some more resources. You can check out the healinghedgehog.com. April is a vast resource for this, but also just remember what that inner voice is saying and start to actively be kinder to yourself as one of the considerations for some improvements in the new year, since this is the time to really reflect. But then also moving into the new year, challenge yourself to reflect a little bit more frequently, because we are always evolving and ever changing, and you're worth the time that you invest in yourself. And anyway, we wish you the most amazing start to the new year. We're so blessed that you stopped in today to see our segment. So grateful for you, April, for sharing your passion, which is women's health, as it pertains to the holistic approach to things. And I hope that you guys have learned some things and that you're feeling like you want to Mr. Kool-Aid through the wall to your nearest whatever thing makes you feel good about yourself. Hopefully it's another one of our YouTube videos. But anyway, thank you for visiting. I'm going to see you guys next time. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe to our channel. And until next time, best foot forward.